What's up, everybody? It's AJ with eTrailer.com. Today we're going to be talking about some bike racks. Now, I'd like to say that every bike rack's awesome, holds your bike perfectly, and there's no issues. That'd be lying. We don't want to do that to you, so we're going to tell you about these bike racks from our experience of us working with them, which ones we didn't really like. What we did was get a bunch of bike racks and get hands-on experience with it over the course of a month. So that gave me and my team a bunch of time to test out the bike racks, put a bike on there, put on a vehicle, and really figure out what we liked and didn't like. Now, we have some suggestions or alternatives to the ones we didn't like. Amber's going to kick it off and tell us about the Swagman.
My least favorite bike rack was the Swagman XTC2. Now, the one huge draw of this bike rack is that it's super cheap, but to me, that's about the only point in its favor. So the first thing that really frustrated me was that when I went to assemble it, it took a lot of effort to get these wheel cradles onto this post here. I ended up having to use a mallet, which had the result of taking up the paint as I got the wheel cradle on. It also ended up, whenever I needed to adjust the wheel cradles for the bike, that also took the paint off, so it was just really annoying that if I had bought this, I would have spent several $100s on this rack only to have it basically self-destruct as I put it together. I'm also not a huge fan of the single center post, which is really annoying when it comes to loading different size bikes onto the rack. Since you have to take these off, reconfigure them, it can be a little bit of work to adjust them to carry the bikes the right way. So all in all, I just wasn't a huge fan of this one. I do understand that it is on the cheaper side, so that is a really big draw, but if you care about the way that your bike rack looks and you just don't want it scratched up or digged and knitted, I would suggest going with something else. AJ, do you have any other options for us?
Swagman actually has a bike rack that's slightly better. It's very similar. It has some of the same issues with the center post, but it did fix some things. So we have wheel straps now around the wheels that make it feel a little bit safer when it's going down the road. You also can tilt it away from the vehicle to get to your back hatch if you have it all loaded up and you forgot to grab something last minute. And it didn't take a hammer to put it together. Next up, we're gonna look at two options from Saris, and Rachel's gonna get us started.
All right, AJ, I want to tell you about some of the issues I ran into with the Saris MHS bike rack. So the first one is that this is a super bulky bike rack at around 60 pounds, I believe, and it is very heavy to carry and install into your hitch with one person. The second thing I want to touch on, these wheel chocks here, I don't personally mind them, but they weren't able to move at all, so it definitely felt like they got in the way when I was loading various bikes. The last thing I want to touch on is this gray lever right here. It makes a very loud clicking sound when it becomes unlatched, but it is also very hard to get unlatched. I had many of my teammates try it, and it took quite a few of us to finally get it unlatched. And then the last thing here is that these arms make a really loud ratcheting sound, so if you are going out into the woods for some peace and quiet, they're not really going to suit that. So what other bike rack do you have for me, AJ?
Actually, I do have a recommendation for you, Rachel, but first, let's talk about the MHS. I don't think it's that bad of a bike rack. I like putting my mountain bike on there. I like how heavy duty it was. It is pretty heavy, but I like that. I know that my bike's gonna be on there secure, holding by both wheels, and that's gonna be both mountain bikes I put on there. And all the mountain bikes I've actually put on there, gone biking with friends, the wheel chocks have never been an issue for me, but I do have a suggestion for you. It's gonna be the Super Clamp from Saris. It's gonna be quite a bit lighter. It's gonna be half as light as the MHS. Also, it's gonna hold it by the wheel still a little bit differently, but still easy to throw your bike on there, and it's gonna be less expensive too. That does it for the Saris bike racks. Next, we're gonna go to Jacob and check out the Hollywood racks.
So of all the bike racks that we tested, my least favorite by a pretty wide margin was the Hollywood Racks Trail Rider. We're gonna start with the pros. This is gonna come in at a much lower price point than a lot of the other bike racks that we tested, which is very nice for the budget conscious biker. It is also going to be able to fold up in on itself. So if you have limited storage, let's say you wanna throw it in a closet when you're not using it, or if you're just a hobby cyclist who only goes every now and again, this might be a great option for you. Now with the cons, so we have a single center post here, and that's gonna hold both your bikes. It is going to make frame contact, which is gonna be not ideal for any abnormal frame bike or carbon frame bike, because it will potentially damage or mess with the finish on those. We also run into a situation where, because both of the hooks are based on this center post, if we wanted to load up a second bike right now, we're gonna have a lot of difficulty if the frame sits any higher than this one. So if it's anything more than a kid's bike, we might have some trouble here. Also, we noticed a lot of movement in this rack, and that comes from this center post right here, actually. It's secure in the hitch, the bike is securely attached, quote unquote, but there's a lot of movement with the actual rack itself. In addition to that, we noticed that these straps right here didn't provide as robust of a hold as we would have liked. They seem very thin and very prone to breaking in any sort of serious driving conditions. So all in all, this bike rack failed to impress us in a number of different ways. AJ, there has to be a better solution, right?
I have another Hollywood racks for you to check out. This is going to be the RV rider. So it solves some of those problems. It still has the center mast you have to work around, except now it has 2 bars. So each frame hook is going to be independent. So you don't have to worry about them running into each other if you have different size bikes. Not an issue. Another problem it solved is it's got rid of all the pins. We have hand knobs instead. Far easier and more reliable to get those tightened down to make sure nothing moves when you're going down the road. Which, speaking of that, this one seemed to be one of the most sturdy ones we actually tested here in the parking lot driving it around. Overall, every bike rack has its pros and its cons, and it's really up to you to decide. This is just what we thought when we were working with these over several weeks, putting bikes on there, giving them test runs. Just want to give you our thoughts and our impressions of those bike racks. If you disagree, let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and thanks for hanging out. If you like that video and you want to see some other ones, you can click right here. If you want to dig a little deeper on this topic, check out articles right over here. Then, if you want to see a playlist of our videos, they're right there. And if you click subscribe, you can check out some installs or some reviews.